CNN studio hummed with tension. Four prominent Democrats sat around a circular table for a discussion on party strategy. Hakeem Jeff, 53, the established voice of leadership, sat with perfect posture. "We need a unified message that appeals to moderate voters," Jeff stated, his tone measured. "That's how we win back the House." The other panelists, a former Obama staffer and a centrist think tank director, nodded. Then came the bombshell. "And frankly," Jeff leaned forward, "we need to rein in the progressive wing's unrealistic demands. Their radical policies and confrontational style are alienating voters." The camera cut to Jasmine Crockett. At 43, the freshman congresswoman from Texas's 30th district represented everything the establishment both feared and needed. A former civil rights attorney, she had risen quickly, bringing unapologetic progressive advocacy and a growing social media following. Her background was not one of Ivy Leagues and connections, but of fighting in the trenches as a public defender. Her election was a fight built on a coalition of young voters, people of color, and working-class supporters. As Jeff's words hung in the air, the stakes were clear: the soul and future of the Democratic Party. Would it be Jeff's measured approach or Crockett's bold vision? The CNN moderator, sensing the drama, turned to Crockett. "Congresswoman, it sounds like Leader Jeff just characterized your wing of the party as a liability. Your response?" The split screen showed Jeff's confident smile against Crockett's steely gaze. Jeff expected an easy win. He didn't know Crockett was prepared. "Thank you for that question," Crockett began, her voice calm but sharp. "And thank you, Leader Jeff, for finally saying out loud what many in leadership have only whispered." The audience felt it. This was no standard political dodge. Crockett was taking the fight directly to the second most powerful Democrat in the House, live on national television. "Let me be perfectly clear," Crockett continued, turning to face Jeff. "When you call our policies radical, what exactly are you referring to? Universal health care? A living wage? Climate action?" The moderator tried to interject, but Crockett held up her hand. "No, I'd really like Leader Jeff to explain which of these radical policies are supposedly driving voters away, because the polling tells a completely different story." Jeff maintained his composure. "Congresswoman, I think you're mischaracterizing my point. We all want progress, but we need to be strategic." "Your approach," Crockett interrupted, her voice rising. "Let's talk about approaches, Leader Jeff. In the last election cycle, progressive candidates outperformed establishment Democrats in swing districts by an average of 5 points. That's not my opinion. That's data from the DNC's own internal analysis." The camera caught Jeff's momentary flinch. He hadn't expected her to come armed with the party's own numbers. "That analysis is incomplete," he began, but Crockett was ready. "I have the full report right here," she said, holding up her tablet. "Would you like me to share the specific findings about which messages actually resonated with voters?" The moderator jumped in. "This seems like a fundamental disagreement. Leader Jeff, how do you respond to the Congresswoman's data?" Jeff shifted, showing the first signs of discomfort. "Selective statistics don't tell the whole story. Extreme rhetoric from the progressive wing makes building a broad coalition harder." "Extreme rhetoric?" Crockett repeated, her eyes narrowing. "Let's talk about extreme. Is it extreme to point out that 3 Americans own more wealth than the bottom 50%? Is it extreme to note that we're the only wealthy nation where people go bankrupt from medical bills?" She turned to the camera. "What's actually extreme is watching party leadership water down every bold proposal, then act surprised when voters feel like nothing ever changes." The other panelists faded into the background. This was a showdown between Jeff and Crockett. Jeff tried to regain control. "The American people elected Joe Biden because they wanted steady, responsible leadership, not revolution. Our job is to deliver practical solutions." "With all due respect, Leader Jeff," Crockett responded, her voice sharp, "the American people elected Joe Biden because they were terrified of the alternative, and they're growing tired of being told that basic human dignity is unrealistic. Other countries provide health care to all citizens. Other democracies have living wages and paid family leave. Why can't the richest nation in history afford these basics?" The tension was palpable. CNN producers were frantic. They wouldn't cut to commercial. Jeff, a skilled debater, attempted to pivot. We share the same goals, Congresswoman. We just disagree on tactics. Do we share the same goals? Crockett shot back. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like leadership is more committed to pleasing donors than delivering for voters. A gasp rippled through the studio. This was an accusation usually reserved for private conversations. That's a serious accusation, Jeff replied, his tone hardening. And frankly, it's the kind of divisive rhetoric that damages our party. What damages our party, Crockett countered, is promising change but never delivering it. What damages our party is telling young people, working people and communities of color to wait their turn again and again. The producer's voice came through the moderator's earpiece. This is ratings gold. Let them go at it. It seems we've hit a nerve, the moderator observed. Congresswoman Crockett, you've accused Leader Jeff and the establishment of putting donor interest over voter needs. Do you have anything to back that up? The camera zoomed in on Crockett as she reached for her tablet. Jeff's expression flickered with concern. I'm glad you asked, Crockett said, pulling up a document, because I think the American people deserve to know whose interests are really being represented. Let's talk about pharmaceutical prices. She looked up at Jeff. 2 years ago, when we had a bill to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices, something 92% of Americans support, it mysteriously got watered down. Leader Jeff, you led the charge to remove insulin price caps. Coincidentally, in the previous quarter, you received $218,000 from pharmaceutical PACs. The studio fell silent. Jeff's facade cracked. Those contribution numbers are public record, but that characterization is completely public record indeed, Crockett interrupted, turning her tablet toward the camera. The screen showed a graphic with donation figures. In fact, I've compiled the donation records for the last 5 major progressive bills that leadership mysteriously couldn't get passed. Would you like to see the correlation between donations and voting patterns? The CNN Chiron updated, Crockett confronts Jeff with donation records live on air. This is a gross misrepresentation, Jeff responded, his voice rising. Campaign finance is complex, and suggesting that donations influence policy decisions is what? Crockett pressed. Accurate. The American people aren't stupid, Leader Jeff. They can see the connection between who funds campaigns and which policies advance or die. She swiped on her tablet. Let's talk about the climate provisions stripped from the infrastructure bill. You personally assured progressive members they'd be included in subsequent legislation. 2 years later, we're still waiting, while you've received over $300,000 from energy companies opposed to those exact provisions. The moderator tried to interject balance. Leader Jeff, how do you respond to these specific allegations? Jeff straightened his jacket, composing himself. Congresswoman Crockett is new to Washington. She doesn't understand how complex legislative negotiations are. We fight for every inch of progress. I may be new to Washington, Crockett replied, her voice resonating with controlled anger, but I'm not new to recognizing when someone's avoiding the question. The American people deserve straight answers. She turned toward the audience. Leader Jeff wants you to believe that progressives are the problem because we actually try to deliver what we promise. He calls our policies radical, but what's truly radical is accepting a system where millions can't afford health care, where working full-time doesn't pay the bills, where we watch our planet burn while politicians take checks from the corporations causing the damage. The cameras shifted between Crockett's impassioned delivery and Jeff's increasing discomfort. What the establishment fears, Crockett continued, isn't that our policies will fail. They fear that our policies will succeed and upset the comfortable arrangement they have with their donors. Then came the moment that would be replayed for weeks. Crockett pulled up another document and slid it across the table to Jeff. This is your voting record on progressive priorities compared to your public statement supporting those same priorities, she said calmly. 27 times in the past 3 years, you've publicly endorsed policies that you then helped kill behind closed doors. The camera zoomed in on the document, showing the damning evidence. That's a selective and misleading presentation, Jeff stammered, visibly unsettled. Is it? Crockett asked, her confidence growing. Because I have the receipts for every single instance. Should we go through them one by one? Without waiting, she continued. March 15th last year, you told CNN you strongly support a $15 minimum wage. That same week, you worked with moderates to attach poison pill amendments that you knew would sink the bill. Jeff reached for his water glass. The tremor in his hand was visible. June 22nd, you publicly backed stronger voting rights protections while simultaneously working to weaken the enforcement mechanisms. Jeff attempted to interrupt, but Crockett was on a roll. September 8th, you stood at a press conference declaring climate change the existential crisis of our time. Your words, while your staff was literally drafting weakened emission standards at the request of donors from the fossil fuel industry. The other panelists sat in stunned silence. The moderator didn't dare interrupt. This isn't about progressive versus moderate, Crockett declared, addressing the viewers. It's about honesty versus hypocrisy. It's about whether we actually fight for the people who elected us or just pretend to while serving other interests. She turned back to Jeff, her voice softening slightly. Leader Jeff, the American people are struggling. They don't need politicians who tell them change is impossible. They need champions who fight for them as hard as you're currently fighting for your donors. The silence was deafening. Jeff looked genuinely shaken, fumbling for a response. I have always worked for what I believe is in the best interest of the American people and our party, he finally managed. I believe you think that's true, Crockett replied, her tone almost sympathetic. But the evidence tells a different story, and it's time for the Democratic Party to decide. Do we want to be the party that fights for working people or the party that just claims to while protecting the status quo? She gestured toward the tablet. The receipts don't lie, leader, and the American people deserve better. The CNN producer's voice crackled urgently. This is going viral. Every network is picking it up. Don't go to commercial. The moderator turned to Jeff. Leader, would you like to address these specific discrepancies? Jeff, a skilled politician, was in uncharted territory. His usual deflections wouldn't work. What matters is moving forward, he attempted. Internal party disagreements. Don't serve with respect, Crockett interrupted. The American people don't want to move forward from accountability. They want leaders who say what they mean and mean what they say. The game had changed. In less than 15 minutes, Jasmine Crockett had done what few progressives had managed. Caught the establishment in its contradictions with irrefutable evidence live on national television, leaving one of the party's most powerful figures struggling for words. Within minutes, the confrontation exploded across social media. Crockett receipts trended nationwide. The receipt drop became an instant meme. Progressive media declared it a watershed moment. Conservative media amplified the conflict, but even they acknowledged Crockett's effectiveness. Twitter was ablaze. AOC tweeted, "This is how it's done. Bring the receipts, always." Bernie Sanders shared the clip. The status quo is getting nervous. Even some moderates were impressed. By evening, the clip had over 50 million views. Morning shows booked guests to discuss the fallout. Political analysts scrambled. Behind the scenes, progressive members flooded Crockett's office with support. Jasmine showed us that with the right preparation, we can win these fights, one anonymous House progressive told Politico. Democratic voters responded with an outpouring of support. Crockett's campaign email list grew by 200,000 in a day. Small dollar donations flooded in, raising over $3 million in 24 hours. Jeff's team scrambled to control the damage, releasing a statement calling for unity but failing to address the specific contradictions. Several House Democrats loyal to leadership attempted to downplay the confrontation, but their efforts only amplified the story. 3 days later, the political landscape had shifted. Jeff called an emergency meeting with the Progressive Caucus, reportedly tense but productive. The dynamics have changed, one Progressive Caucus member told the Washington Post. Before Crockett's confrontation, leadership could dismiss us. Now they know we're keeping receipts. Policy positions began shifting. A stalled prescription drug pricing bill found new life with stronger provisions. Climate legislation was reconsidered. Several centrist Democrats reconsidered their position on a $15 minimum wage. For everyday Americans, the impact was profound. Comment sections filled with, "Finally someone said it." Many expressed renewed hope that politics could deliver change if more officials held power accountable. Political science professors and media analysts dissected the confrontation as a case study in effective communication. What made Crockett's approach so devastating wasn't just that she challenged leadership, explained an expert on MSNBC. It's that she came with irrefutable evidence presented clearly and directly. She didn't rely on rhetoric, she brought receipts. 2 weeks later, polling showed a significant shift. Support for progressive policies increased by 12 points, while trust in establishment leadership declined. Enthusiasm among young voters and marginalized communities surged. The long-term implications remained to be seen, but one thing was clear. Jasmine Crockett had fundamentally altered the power dynamics within the Democratic Party. By exposing the gap between public promises and private actions with concrete evidence, she had created a template for accountability. This isn't just about one confrontation, Crockett told supporters. It's about demanding that our leaders actually fight for the people they claim to represent. As Washington adjusted, political observers agreed. The rules of engagement had changed. Crockett had raised the bar for political authenticity and accountability. In politics, there are moments that define eras, wrote a veteran columnist. Jasmine Crockett bringing receipts to Hakeem Jeff may well be remembered as the moment the progressive movement truly found its voice, not just in passion, but in power.